The sea was angry, crashing waves like roaring beasts against the wooden hull of the ship. Daenerys Targaryen stood at the edge, silver hair flowing in the wind, her purple eyes fixed on the distant horizon. Westeros, the land of her birth. The place her family ruled before it was all taken away. Instead of waiting in Essos, like in another world, this time Daenerys had not stayed in the east. Sir Jorah Mormont had convinced her, the longer you stay, Khaleesi, the harder it will be. Strike early, strike while they don't expect you. And so, not long after Khal Drogo's death, and with 3 newly hatched dragons clinging to her shoulders, she sailed westward toward the land that had once belonged to the Targaryens. Her arrival was not grand. No armies, no banners, no supporters waiting at the docks. Just one small ship, a few loyal men, and the silent fire of her dragons. They landed on the Stormlands coast, near the ruined Targaryen stronghold of Summerhall, far from the eyes of King's Landing. The people here whispered stories of her, the Dragon Girl, the Silver Queen. Many didn't believe she was real. But when they saw the baby dragons hissing and spitting sparks, belief spread like wildfire. Some feared her, some wanted to help her, most just watched. She took shelter in an old keep, broken and forgotten. The walls were cracked, the roof leaking, but it was hers, her first foothold. Jorah brought her news. Robert Baratheon was still king, but his health was failing. His brothers were already preparing for war, and the Lannisters were growing bolder in the capital. Daenerys smiled, not out of joy, but understanding. The realm was tearing itself apart, just like Jorah had said. If she could light the bright fire at the right time, she could burn down the ones who stole her throne. But it wouldn't be easy. Word had reached King's Landing. Varys the Spider heard of a silver-haired girl with dragons in the Stormlands. He told the small council, careful with his words. A rumor, perhaps, but rumors sometimes carry fire. Cersei laughed. Let the girl play with her lizards. Robert will crush her like a bug. But Robert didn't laugh. He remembered Rhaegar. He remembered the fire. He remembered the screams. Send someone. Now, I want her dead before she grows teeth. He sent someone. Now, I want her dead before she grows teeth. He sent Sir Jaime. Not a whole army, not yet, just a warning. Jaime rode fast with 12 men in gold cloaks. He didn't expect trouble, after all. She was just a girl. But when he reached the keep in the woods, he found more than he expected. The silver-haired girl stood tall, dragons perched on her shoulders, their small bodies smoking with heat. Jorah stood at her side, blade ready. Farmers and outlaws, now sworn to her cause, filled the halls, armed and ready. Jaime raised his hand. I don't want to fight. I came to speak. Daenerys stepped forward, her voice calm. Then speak, Kingslayer, and choose your words like your life depends on them. Jaime looked around, realizing this wasn't a child playing queen. Westeros has no place for another war. You were gone too long. This is not your home anymore. Her dragons growled. She didn't flinch. Then I will make it mine again, stone by stone, flame by flame. As Jaime turned to leave, he looked over his shoulder. I hope you know what you're starting, girl. This land is soaked in blood. And you're bringing fire. Daenerys watched him ride off, then turned to Jorah. Let them come. Let them all come. I have waited my whole life for this, and I will not be afraid. In the shadows of the Stormlands, fire was rising. The next morning, the villagers near Summerhall woke to thick fog creeping through the trees and a strange heat in the air. Whispers traveled faster than the wind. The Targaryen girl is real, and she has dragons. Some spoke in fear, others in awe. but all agreed something old and dangerous had returned to Westeros. Daenerys knew it was not enough to survive, she had to inspire, so she ordered her small camp to move into the nearest town, a dusty village called Oak Hollow. The local lord had died with no heir, and the people lived under the harsh rule of a Lannister-appointed knight who taxed them cruelly. She arrived not with banners or bloodshed, but with open hands and fire at her back. The knight, Sir Wilhelm, laughed when he saw her. "A girl with pets thinks she's a queen?" he sneered from atop his horse. Daenerys didn't argue. She let Drogon hiss, let the creature's shadows stretch over the village like a dark omen. When the knight raised his sword, Daenerys gave a single word, Dracarys. The flame that followed was not large. Drogon was still small, but the heat was enough to melt armor, to burn skin, to make men scream. Sir Wilhelm fell from his horse, and the villagers saw a queen who didn't ask for power, she took it. After that, the people pledged loyalty not from fear, but hope. She gave them food, healed their sick, and swore to protect them. "I do not want to rule over ashes," she told them, "but I will burn those who keep you in chains." Jorah warned her, "You're moving too fast. The crown will strike soon." "Then let them strike," she replied. "Let them see what it means to wake a dragon." Far away, in King's Landing, Robert was growing restless. His body had grown fat, his hands shaking more each day. But when he heard that a village had sworn fealty to Daenerys, he roared with fury. "She dares to claim land. My land!" He spat wine across the table. "Send men, send fire. Burn her like her father burned my family." But Tywin Lannister was colder. "This girl will die on her own if you let her. Let the people see her as a foreign tyrant, not a savior. If you strike now, you make her a martyr." Varys, quiet as always, offered only a whisper. "But what if she is different? What if she brings more than fire?" Robert ignored them. He sent a raven to Stannis on Dragonstone, "Kill the girl before the realm remembers her name." But Daenerys was already 2 steps ahead. In the darkness of night, a cloaked man arrived in her camp. He claimed to be a brother of the Night's Watch, but Jorah knew better. The man's speech was too careful, his eyes too sharp. He was no brother. He was a spy, possibly sent by Varys. Daenerys didn't turn him away. She invited him to sit, fed him, and listened. When he spoke of dragons, of old Valyria, she smiled. "Even my enemies come to me in curiosity," she said. "Perhaps they sense the future." But she did not trust him. That night, she whispered to her dragons as they slept beside her bed, "We must be smarter than them. They think I am just a child with fire, but fire is not foolish. Fire remembers." The next day, her scouts brought her news. A Lannister force, 200 strong, was marching from the east. Jaime had not listened. He had returned to King's Landing and told them everything. They were coming to crush her before she took root. Daenerys gathered her people. Farmers, former sellswords, a few loyal Dothraki who had crossed the narrow sea with her. They were not an army. They were a family, a fire waiting to be unleashed. "We do not run," she said, her voice calm but fierce. "We are not children playing war. We are the blood of the dragon, and dragons do not flee." They built traps in the forest, dug ditches, set fires along the paths. It was not a battle. They couldn't win a battle. But they could bleed their enemies, break their spirit, remind them that this land still remembered its queen. When the Lannister soldiers came, armored and proud, they laughed at the sight of poor farmers holding spears. But the laughter died quickly, first in smoke, then in fire. Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion had never flown so high before, but the hunger in their bellies matched the rage in Daenerys' heart. From the trees, from the sky, from the ground itself, flames rose. And in the end, the road to Oak Hollow was lined not with victory banners, but with ashes. Daenerys stood in the ruins, barefoot, smoke curling around her dress. She had made her mark. Westeros would never ignore her again. Word of the battle spread faster than any raven. Peasants sang of a silver queen with fire in her breath. Small folk whispered tales of how dragons had returned, not across the sea, not in dreams, but here in the soil of Westeros. Daenerys didn't smile when she heard these stories. She had lost 30 men, some barely old enough to shave. She had seen the cost of every scream, every flame. Victory felt like a wound that hadn't stopped bleeding. Jorah watched her closely. "You've made them afraid," he said softly. "I didn't come to be feared," she replied, staring at the blackened battlefield. "I came to take back what was mine. You may have already done both." In King's Landing, Robert Baratheon sat in silence. His fists were clenched, his face pale. The wine no longer dulled the ache in his chest. A girl had just defeated his soldiers. And with dragons, he turned to the small council, voice shaking. "I want her dead. I want her head on a spike. Do you hear me? Bring me her head." Cersei rolled her eyes. "And how will you do that, Robert? Send more idiots into the fire? She'll burn them too." Littlefinger leaned forward, ever the serpent. "We don't need armies. We need whispers, assassins, poisons. If fire burns the sword, use the needle." Varys, for once, agreed. She is winning hearts, and hearts can be more dangerous than swords. If she gains the Riverlands, we may already be too late. But Robert was deaf to reason now. He ordered more men raised, gold sent north and south. He wanted fire, and he didn't care what it cost. Meanwhile, Daenerys was already moving. She couldn't stay in Oak Hollow forever. It was too small, too exposed. Her dragons were growing fast, but they weren't strong enough yet to face a full army. She needed allies, real ones. Jorah suggested the Tullys of Riverrun. If they still hold loyalty to the old ways, they may remember the Targaryens with less hatred than others. So Daenerys sent ravens. She wrote with her own hand, "I am Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen. I have come not to destroy but to reclaim. The throne taken from my family was built on fire and blood. I offer a new beginning, not for lords, but for the people who suffer under them. If you believe in that cause, meet me in truth. If not, you may face my dragons." Not all answered, but one did. The raven came from Dawn. Prince Doran Martell had long memories. Memories of his sister Elia, murdered by Lannisters, of children dashed against walls by the mountain. He read Daenerys's words and closed his eyes. Perhaps the wheel is turning. He sent his nephew Oberyn to meet her in secret. When Oberyn Martell rode into her camp, it was not with guards but alone, his eyes dancing with interest. "I expected a child," he said, dismounting. "Instead, I find a queen, and 3 little monsters." Daenerys smirked. "They're not monsters, they're mine." He walked toward Drogon, who hissed lowly. Oberyn didn't flinch. "You're not afraid of fire," she noted. He looked back at her, deadly calm. "My family burned once. I've been waiting to return the favor." The alliance was not sealed in writing, but in wine and shared pain. Oberyn promised her Dornish support if she proved she could survive long enough to deserve it, and she would. Back in the Riverlands, rumors grew. A red priest had seen a vision of a woman with silver hair walking through flames untouched. Some called her Azor Ahai. Others called her the Storm Witch. But all agreed on one thing: the dragons were real, and they had come home. The Lannisters couldn't ignore her now. Tywin summoned his forces and began to send men to the borders. Robb Stark, in the north, was watching too. He didn't trust the girl, but he hated the Lannisters more. And if she could burn them, the realm was changing. Every raven carried her name now. Daenerys stood atop a hill that night, her dragons circling overhead. She looked at the stars, the land that stretched beyond her reach. "We will not stop," she whispered. "Not until the lion kneels. Not until the Iron Throne is mine, and I would take it, not as a beggar or a bride, but as fire and blood." The ground beneath her trembled, not from fear, but from the wings of destiny rising. It rained the night the raven came from Riverrun. Daenerys stood beneath the broken roof of an old tower, watching the storm soak the earth. The letter in her hand was damp, but the words burned clear. Lord Edmure Tully had responded, not with praise or fear, but with an invitation. He had written only, "Come. If you are who you claim to be, show us. If not, don't bother knocking." Jorah was skeptical. It could be a trap. "Then we spring it," Daenerys said, folding the letter. "We don't win thrones by hiding." She didn't take her army, not yet. She left her dragons behind in Oak Hollow, protected by the remaining Dothraki and loyal villagers. She rode to Riverrun with only Jorah, Grey Worm, and 5 Unsullied dressed in simple clothes. When they reached the Tully lands, the Riverlands looked worn. Fields once rich with wheat now lay half-burnt. Bandits roamed freely. The war between Lannisters and the Starks had poisoned everything. At Riverrun's gates, she was met by Sir Brynden Tully, the blackfish sword at his hip, eyes sharp. "You wear the Targaryen face well," he said, "but a dragon's face is easy to paint. Show us why we should believe you are not just another flame waiting to burn us." Daenerys dismounted calmly. "Because I know what it's like to be powerless. I know what it means to be exiled, to beg for food, to walk with nothing but a name. I do not come to conquer. I come to take back what was stolen and break the wheel that crushes us all." Brynden didn't reply, but he opened the gate. Theodot. Edmure sat at the high table, his face pale and cautious. "You are young," he said, scanning her with uneasy eyes, "and fire can be dangerous in young hands." Daenerys leaned forward. "So can silence, so can waiting for heroes who never come. I am not my father, Lord Tully. I did not burn cities. I buried my husband with my own hands. I walked through fire to protect the innocent. I am not here to rule over the Riverlands. I'm here to earn your loyalty." Oberyn Martell arrived that same night, riding hard from the south. He entered the hall laughing, boots soaked and face wild with excitement. "You Riverlords are too quiet. A queen walks into your keep, and you sit there like frightened hens." Edmure looked confused. "Martell, what are you doing here?" "Dawn remembers," Oberyn said, voice sharp. "Dawn remembers," Oberyn said, voice sharp. "Dawn remembers Elia. We remember the screams, the blood on Tywin's hands. And now we see a chance to pay that blood back with fire." With both the Martells and whispers of Stark sympathy, the Tullys hesitated, but they didn't say no. That was enough for Daenerys. A few days later, her small company returned to Oak Hollow. But something was wrong. Smoke rose into the sky. The village was in ruins. Her people were scattered. Dead bodies lay in the mud. The dragons were gone. Jorah dismounted first, his sword out. "No flags," he muttered. "No banners. Who did this?" Grey Worm knelt beside a burned corpse, unsullied, killed with poisoned arrows. Cowards. Daenerys didn't speak. Her eyes scanned the destruction. Her heart beat like a drum in her ears. Suddenly, A small girl limped from the trees, blood on her dress. She pointed behind her. "They took them," she whispered. "The dragons caged them," she whispered. "The dragons caged them." Men in black and red, not Lannisters, not soldiers, mercenaries. "Gold cloaks?" Jorah asked. The girl shook her head. "No, not city guards. They had no flags, just gold coins and cruel laughs. They said someone paid them to steal the beasts while you were gone." Daenerys clenched her fists, nails biting into her palm. "They took my children." Oberyn, who had followed close behind, looked at her. "You said it yourself. The game is played in shadows. Someone knew you'd leave your dragons behind." She didn't cry. She didn't scream. But something in her face changed, a coldness, a storm brewing behind violet eyes. "We find them," she said. "Every last one of them. And we burn the hand that fed them." A week later, a message arrived. A single piece of parchment. No seal. Just one sentence. "Come to Harrenhal if you want your dragons back." No signature. No threats. Just bait. Jorah looked at her. "It's a trap." Daenerys stared at the letter, then into the fire. "Then let's show them what happens when you trap a dragon." The road to Harrenhal was soaked in mist and legend. The villagers Daenerys passed along the way didn't speak its name. They called it the Cursed Castle, the Ash Tower, or the place where fire still screams. Harrenhal was the ruin Aegon the Conqueror turned to molten stone with Balerian's flame. It had once defied dragons and paid the price. Now someone had taken her children there. Daenerys rode ahead of her party, the chill air biting through her cloak. She said little, her eyes cold and unreadable. Jorah had never seen her like this before, not even when Viserys died. This was not grief. It was vengeance, quiet, sharp, and waiting. Oberyn Martell caught up to her near the lake before Harrenhal came into view. "You don't need to walk into this alone," he said. Daenerys didn't look at him. "They took my dragons. They stole my blood. Whoever did this thinks they can use me like a piece in their game. And you're going to flip the board." She finally turned, her voice low and steady. "I'm going to burn it." As the ruins of Harrenhal appeared, twisted towers like broken teeth against the grey sky, scouts returned. The castle wasn't empty. At least 200 men guarded it, mercenaries, likely sellswords, judging by the mismatched armor and loose discipline. But it wasn't the numbers that troubled Jorah. It was the silence. No movement from the towers, no war horns, just stillness. "We should wait," he urged. "Circle the walls, find another way in." But Daenerys dismounted, handing her reins to Grey Worm. "I'm going in." Before they could stop her, she walked toward the gates alone. The drawbridge groaned open. Inside the vast ruined hall, shadows danced along the stone. Fires burned in scattered pits, and in the center, beneath the shattered ribs of Harren's great hall, were 3 iron cages. The dragons were inside. Drogon snarled and threw himself against the bars, his black scales shimmering with smoke. Rhaegal hissed, wings beating furiously. Viserion let out a low, guttural cry sound Daenerys had never heard from him before. It was not fear. It was fury. She stepped forward, heartbreaking. "My sweet children, I'm here." From behind the cages, a man stepped into view. He wore no armor, just a cloak of red and black Targaryen colors, faded and stolen. His face was hard, pale, and familiar. "Do you remember me, Your Grace?" he asked, bowing slightly. Daenerys stared. "You're from Braavos." The man smiled. "And Essos, and Westeros, wherever gold flows." I have many names, but let's just say I serve those who find dragons useful. You work for the Lannisters? He laughed. No, no, the Lannisters are loud, obvious. I serve someone much older, much quieter. Who? He stepped closer to the cages. The one who remembers what dragons can do. The one who wants a dragon of his own. Daenerys narrowed her eyes. And you think you can tame them. We don't need to tame them. Just study them, use them. For the right price, even a queen can be bought. She took a deep breath, feeling the fire build in her chest. You made one mistake. And what's that? She stepped forward. You left the door open. Behind her, a shrill whistle echoed. From the hills, her men charged. Grey Worm led the Unsullied like a wave of steel. Arrows rained from the broken towers, but Oberyn had already climbed the far wall with his spear and a dozen Dornish men. The mercenaries panicked. They hadn't expected an attack, not now, not here. Inside the hold, Daenerys ran toward the cages. Drogon roared, flames leaking from his jaws. The mercenary leader turned, pulling a blade, but Daenerys was faster. She snatched a fallen sword and drove it into his side. He gasped, stunned, not by the wound, but the fury behind it. You thought I was a girl playing queen, she whispered, pulling the blade free. But I am not my brother. Jorah arrived seconds later, slicing the lock off Drogon's cage. The dragon burst free, smoke exploding from his jaws. One of the guards screamed, catching fire before he could even run. Daenerys didn't run. She walked between the flames. Drogon circled her once, then crouched low. She climbed onto his back without fear. Outside, the sellswords scattered. Harrenhal burned again, just like it had centuries ago. Fire poured from the sky as Drogon swept low, scattering the survivors. Rhaegal and Viserion followed, newly freed, their wings stronger than before. By dawn, only ash remained. Daenerys stood among the ruins, the wind blowing her silver hair back, her dragons behind her. They wanted to own me, she said to Jorah, but I am not a piece on their board. Jorah nodded. What now? She turned her gaze east, toward the riverlands, toward King's Landing, beyond. Now, she said softly, we bring the fire to the lion's den. Smoke still clung to her skin. Days after Harrenhal had burned, the stench of scorched stone and blood lingered in Daenerys's hair, her clothes, her memory. She sat beneath the ruins of a weirwood tree near a riverbank, watching Drogon circle overhead while Grey Worm sharpened his blade nearby. The dragons had grown noticeably. The fight had changed them. Freed from cages, baptized again in fire, they moved with more purpose. Hungrier, sharper, more than pets now. They were weapons. Daenerys watched them with a strange sadness in her chest. They had been born in her arms. Now they outgrew her shadow. Jorah approached with a scroll in hand, his face pale. A message from the Eyrie. She raised an eyebrow. The Vale. They heard about Harrenhal, about the dragons. Lord Robin Arryn's court is in chaos, but there's someone there. Lady Lysa. She wants to meet. Lysa? She wants to meet. Lysa? Daenerys frowned. Captain Stark's sister? She says she has no love for the Lannisters. And she claims she knows a secret about Robert Baratheon, one that could destroy his claim to the throne. That caught Daenerys' attention. Everything in this war so far had been about fire and steel. But secrets could crack kingdoms from within. She stood, brushing dirt from her hands. Oberyn Martell caught wind of the news while bathing in the river, as he always seemed to be at the most inappropriate times. You trust that mad woman with her sky cells and moon doors? he said, smirking. "I'd rather sleep with a viper." "Actually, I have. It was safer." But Daenerys didn't hesitate. "The Lannisters control the throne because they control the story. If she has a way to rip it apart, I want to hear it." The journey was long. Through the Riverlands, every burned village was a reminder of what the crown had allowed in the name of power. Daenerys passed starving children, hanged rebels, entire forests cut down for war machines. The realm was breaking, and she was determined to break the ones responsible. When they finally reached the gates of the Vale, the climb to the Eyrie felt like ascending into the clouds. The mountain path was narrow, deadly, but the moment she reached the high halls, she saw how fear ruled even this high. Lady Lysa stood in silks, her eyes wild, her son clinging to her sleeve. The boy looked terrified of Drogon, even from miles away. "You brought monsters," Lysa hissed, stepping forward. "Fire-breathing monsters." "I brought justice," Daenerys replied calmly. "You sent for me." Lysa nodded quickly, looking over her shoulder. "Yes, yes, I did. You need to know." The Baratheon, Robert, he was never the rightful king. Daenerys narrowed her eyes. "Explain." Lysa paced, her voice turning breathless. "Jon Arryn knew. He was Hand of the King. He found the truth, and they killed him. Poisoned. Because he learned that Cersei's children, Joffrey, Tommen, they're not Roberts. They're Jaime's, Lannister bastards." The room froze. Even Jorah went still. "If this is true," Daenerys began. "It is," Lysa whispered. "Jon told me. He died for it. Robert ruled on a lie. Everything built after that? It's a house of cards. You don't need to burn the throne, girl. You just have to blow." Oberyn leaned in close to Daenerys and whispered, "She's mad. But this is real." Daenerys turned to Lysa. "Swear this before lords. Write it in your hand. I will send ravens to every major house. If this truth spreads, the Lannisters will lose the realm before I even reach the gates." "And what will I get?" Lysa asked, eyes glittering. "What do I receive when you sit the throne?" Daenerys didn't blink. "The Vale will be left untouched, and your son will grow up in a world no longer ruled by liars." The next day, scrolls left the Eyrie like birds fleeing a storm, each bearing Lysa Arryn's seal, declaring Joffrey a bastard born of incest, and naming Daenerys as the last true heir of the Targaryen line. The realm shook. In King's Landing, Cersei slapped Maester Pycelle so hard he dropped his scroll. Tywin went silent, lips tightening, and Robert Baratheon, drunk and half-conscious, stared at the fire and muttered, "It was always going to come to this." The crown began to crack not from war, but from whispers, and across the mountains, Daenerys stood on a cliff, her dragon circling behind her, the wind pulling at her hair. "You see now," she whispered, "truth is a fire, and I've only just started the flame." They called it the Storm of Scrolls. From the Eyrie to Highgarden, from the Iron Islands to the frozen towers of Winterfell, Lysa Arryn's letters fell like sparks across dry grass. Every lord, every lady, every hedge knight with a banner to his name read the same words. "Joffrey Baratheon is not Robert's true son. The Lannisters have stolen the throne through incest and murder. The rightful queen has returned." Chaos followed like a shadow. In the north, Robb Stark read the letter aloud before his bannermen. Catelyn stood beside him, pale and speechless. Her sister had confirmed what Ned Stark had once died, to protect the truth. Now the young wolf looked to the south, not just for vengeance, but justice. "The dragons are back," Robb muttered, "and they speak with our enemy's secrets." In the Reach, Marjorie Tyrell's smile turned sharper. "So the lion cub wears a crown built on lies," she said to her grandmother Olenna. "Perhaps it's time we planted our roses elsewhere." the Westerlands went quiet. Tywin Lannister read the letter 3 times and never said a word. Then, slowly, he began gathering gold. Not for war, for debts. Even the richest lion knows when the hunt has turned against him. But the worst storm brewed in King's Landing. Joffrey had always been unstable, but now he was furious. He tore through the throne room, kicking over chairs, ordering the deaths of every raven keeper in the city. "She lies," he screamed. "I am the king." Cersei slapped him hard. "You will sit still," she hissed. "You will smile, and you will not speak until I tell you." Varys tried to calm the court. Pycelle fumbled through ancient laws, but the damage was done. The people were whispering, "Now bastard king, mad queen, dragonfire is coming." And it was. Daenerys, meanwhile, rode through the riverlands with her dragons flying above. The people didn't cheer, not yet, but they bowed their heads. They brought her bread, salt, and water signs of trust. Small folk with nothing offered her shelter. Songs were written of her, still rough and unfinished, but growing. She did not raise taxes. She took no hostages. She left behind medicine, grain, and protection. Wherever she passed, the Lannister banners were torn down, quietly burned, and replaced with black and red. Her army swelled. The Martells marched north from Dawn. The Riverlords, encouraged by Edmure and the Blackfish, sent their soldiers to her banner. And then came the wildest surprise. Renly Baratheon. He arrived at her camp with only 20 knights, but his words were louder than any army. "If Joffrey is not Robert's true-born son, I am next in line." Daenerys listened, half amused. "And yet here you are," she said, "riding to the girl with dragons." Renly smiled. "Because dragons make better friends than enemies. I offer alliance, power shared." Jorah leaned toward her, whispering, "He wants your crown." "Let him chase it," Daenerys replied. "I have fire." Still, she agreed to a truce with Renly for now. She needed time. Her dragons were growing, yes, but not fast enough. She needed more than soldiers and whispers. She needed fear. That's when she set her eyes on King's Landing. Not to attack, not yet, but to remind them. So, one cold night, beneath a moon veiled in mist, Daenerys climbed onto Drogon's back and flew. She didn't bring her army, just herself and her dragons. They flew low, silent shadows across the Blackwater Bay. The guards at the gates never saw her pass. The Red Keep's torches flickered as if they sensed what was coming. And then, just before dawn, the people of King's Landing woke to screams. 3 dragons soared over the city, not attacking, circling. Children cried. Merchants fled. Bells rang wildly. Cersei ran to the balcony just in time to see Drogon fly straight toward the throne room windows before banking away at the last second, his wings stirring the air like a storm. And then he roared, a sound not of this world, a sound that cracked glass and hearts alike. And just like that, they vanished back into the clouds. No buildings burned, no blood was spilled, but the message was clear. She's here, she's watching, and fire waits only for her command. Back in her camp, Daenerys sat silently as her generals praised the stunt. Jorah smiled, even Oberyn looked impressed, but Daenerys just stared at the flames. "They call me the Stormborn," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. "But they've forgotten what the storm truly is." She looked up, eyes glowing with reflected fire. "Let them remember." King's Landing didn't sleep after the dragons came. No horns blew, no swords clashed, but fear itself had laid siege to the capital. Fires were lit on every tower. Archers lined the walls, trembling at every sound in the sky. Noblemen fled in secret. Merchants closed their shops. The small folk whispered prayers not to the Seven, but to the Dragon Queen prayers for mercy before the flames came. Inside the Red Keep, Madness bloomed like a weed in the cracks of power. Joffrey screamed at his Kingsguard, demanding a war council, then a public execution, then a feast. He ordered all dragon statues in the city smashed. "No one will speak her name," he yelled, slamming his crown onto the floor. "I am the king, not some silver-haired witch." Cersei, pale and frantic, drank more wine each night. She clutched Tommen like a lifeline, whispering to him about leaving the city, about ships, about escape. Even Tywin looked shaken. "She doesn't need to knock," he muttered during a small council meeting. "She's already inside the walls, and the people welcome her." But it wasn't just fear Daenerys had spread, it was choice. Across Westeros, lords now faced a question sharper than any sword: bend the knee to the dragon or burn with the lion. And one by one they chose. House Tully declared for her. House Martell raised her banners. The Tyrells, always cunning, sent gold and grain with no words, only silence that spoke louder than loyalty. Even the Ironborn sent envoys eager, restless. Dragons ruled the sea as easily as the sky. Only the Lannisters stood firm and alone. Daenerys moved fast. Her army now stretched across the riverlands. She no longer needed to march on the capital. She just had to close her fist. "We cut off supplies," Jorah said. "Choke them slowly. Make the people rise first." But Daenerys shook her head. "No, this ends where it began, in fire." Oberyn nodded. "I'll ride with you." "Not this time," she said. "This is not a battle. It's a reckoning." At sunrise, the gates of King's Landing opened, not by force, but by fear. Hundreds of citizens surged out, fleeing the city like rats from a sinking ship. The guards didn't stop them. Some even dropped their weapons and joined them. In the skies above, the dragons returned bigger, darker, faster. Their shadows crawled over the walls like a prophecy fulfilled. Daenerys stood before the city with her dragons behind her, her silver hair braided in the old Valyrian style. Her armor, black with red trimming, shimmered with dragon scale. She looked not like a queen, but like a force of nature. "Bring me the lion's head," she said. It was Jaime who came to her first. Not as a knight, but a man defeated. He approached with his golden hand glinting in the light, no sword on his hip. "I came to stop this," he said, "to save them." "You're too late," Daenerys replied coldly. "I know." He looked down. "Then let me do one thing right before the end." She allowed him to pass. He never returned. Later, they found him in the Red Keep, dead. His golden hand wrapped around Cersei's wrist as they lay together beneath the rubble of the tower, collapsed during the chaos when the people rioted. The lion and lioness, crushed not by dragonfire, but by the weight of their own throne. Daenerys entered the capital to the sound of silence. No cheers, no songs, just bowed heads and quiet breath. She climbed the stairs of the great sept where the Iron Throne had once stood, burned, twisted, and melted into a jagged mess. Drogon had destroyed it without being told, as if he knew what she needed. Jorah came to her side. "It's done." Daenerys stood before the throne's remains. "No," she whispered. "It's begun." She turned to the people gathered in the square, nobles, peasants, former guards, children. Her voice rose, clear and thunderous. "I am not your queen because of blood. I am your queen because I chose to fight for those no one else would. The throne is gone, and with it the games of houses and bloodlines. From this day forward, there will be no more kings who play with lives like coins." She looked at the scorched sky. "I will not rebuild the wheel. I will break it." The crowd listened. No one shouted. No one knelt. But something else happened, something deeper. They believed her. And in that moment, the Dragon Queen became more than fire and fury. She became hope. That night, Daenerys walked alone through the ruined halls of the Red Keep. Drogon flew above, his wings casting long shadows over the city. And somewhere in the darkness, where kings once whispered lies and queens wept alone, a girl who had once been sold for nothing stood victorious, not by fate, not by blood, but by fire.